It's been an unexpected day inside Helldivers, that's for sure, ranging from a failure notice from Super Earth High Command to all of the sudden being flung into the very next phase of our Cyberstan campaign, leading to players asking how that one happened. Plus, we've got a very important piece of in-game news that makes every Helldiver death count, bringing to light items that the player base is becoming increasingly frustrated over not being fixed. So yeah, it's time to break it all down. If you want to help support the channel, you know what to do. If you're on mobile, swipe right to hype the video, and let's check out all the latest inside Helldivers. Well, as you know, Cyberstan has been an absolute bloodbath, with massive casualties inflicted on both sides. Now, ever since the hacker incident, pausing of the Galactic War, and the Phase 3 Major Order, let's just say that it led to some losing part of their Cyberstan motivation. Overall, the player counts were there, as evidenced here by taking a look at the Steam DB PC player counts, and although we didn't bounce back to the original 173,000 count we saw back on February 10th and 11th when the Machinery of Oppression update dropped, we've still seen fairly consistent counts though, again on PC only, topping over 142,000 just this past Sunday. But some of the was taken out of our sails when the Major Order was reset and reworked, with the dispatches and notices coming in rapid fire. Now, our last dispatch consisted of a notice that the automatons were attempting to evacuate, let's call them non-essential personnel, under the guise of them being non-combatant industrial units, and they were moving them into fortified bunkers with sea forces shelling their retreat routes all along the way, resulting in planet-wide defense ratings being temporarily compromised. Even with that extra push, and some would argue extra help, the Helldivers ran out of time before securing the necessary operation count of 8 million. Now, looking back on it, I think we were one of the last squads fighting on Cyberstan leading up to the end of the Phase 3 timer. And when we jumped off planet, we were at about, 2 hours to go and only sitting at 85% complete, which of course landed us with this failure notice. Phase 3 of Operation Valid Pretext has ended. Friendly forces have taken severe casualties. Low operational efficacy has allowed the cyborg defense to retain strength. Nevertheless, multiple mega factories have been destroyed and the SEAF offensive has taken significant ground. Reinforcements are not yet depleted. Operation Valid Pretext must continue. Defeat is not acceptable. Transcendence, the cyborg capital mega factory, will soon be within reach. So overall, we seem to have put a large dent in the cyborg cities and their capacity to make war, but we missed out on the final few nails in their metallic coffins, and they've lived to fight another day. And so I found it kind of odd when, after failing to meet that 8 million mark on Phase 3, we were then met immediately with Phase 4? Huh? Yep. Phase 4, Liberate Cyberstan, is initiated. Transcendence will soon be within reach, and with it, the neural heart of the socialist war machine. If Transcendence falls, the enemy's entire planetary defense will collapse regardless of remaining enemy strongholds. This is the precipice. Every battle, every shot, and every sacrifice of Operation Valid Pretext has led to this moment. Helldivers, strike at the core. Destroy Transcendence to liberate Cyberstan, end the cyborg threat before they can transmit their corruption further. High Command has allotted the entirety of the remaining reinforcement budget to this final assault. You must finish this fight with the forces you have. There is no safety net. You are all that stands between manufacture of mechanized tyranny and the children of Super Earth. Emancipate the planet from its socialist overlords. Let Cyberstan bathe in the majesty of managed democracy. All right, reading over this, I guess your guess is as good as mine if Phase 4 is indeed the final countdown for Cyberstan and the Borg. And I assume we will find out over the next 5 days or over, and assuming that we're able to fight through to Transcendence and just burn it to the ground. But I did want to point out this bit to the order that some of you may not have noticed, where it says, quote, High Command has allotted the entirety of the remaining reinforcement budget to this final assault. You must finish this fight with the forces you have. There is no safety net, which, okay, looking back on it now, makes me think that yes, Phase 4 is indeed our final blitz on Cyberstan, with victory resting on Transcendence. Now, looking back over this last week, and especially Cyberstan, and the whole Helldiver hacker incident, which, by the way, if you didn't see what happened last week, I did some digging and got you some answers from around the Helldiver community as to what actually did happen, and I outlined it in this video. Anyways, looking back, I find myself still thinking that had Phase 3 not been jacked with, we could have pulled it off with no interference, but after the pausing of the war and, of course, the reset of the major order, it kind of stalled our initiative and drive to keep pounding away at the bots and the Borg. However, after today's failure notice and immediately, and might I add, mysteriously being flung just straight into Phase 4, looking back on last week and seeing the rework from mission completions to operations after that failed hacker attempt made overall Phase 3 quite a bit harder to complete. Not every player out there has the time to log in and hit a 40-minute mission, then maybe another 40-minute mission, or at the minimum, a single 40-minute mission, and then to keep on going with an eradicate and then a blitz. Arrowhead changed the requirements from missions to operations, and it immediately threw quite a big dampener on our efforts, a point that Mine MMO touched on in an article posted today. Quote, "The players of Helldivers 2 should have lost a long time ago, but the developers are particularly gracious." This article kind of touches on the points that without the extra reinforcements that were offered up for completing the secondary objectives, we would have lost our campaign on Cyberstan long ago, which they view as the devs not allowing their planned story narrative to fail. But the main point that they try to touch on in this article is the mood among the Helldiver fandom, which they go into here. Quote, "The mood within the Helldivers 2 community is currently heated. While some have no problem bringing supplies back to the front through side missions, others see a structural problem. Some players blame hackers for not capturing Cyberstan. Shortly after the campaign started, the developers had to reverse some points because hackers had completed thousands of campaign missions in just a few minutes through an exploit. After the developers' fix, the individual missions no longer counted. Only completed operations counted towards the campaign score. This means that Helldivers must successfully complete multiple missions to achieve progress for the campaign on Cyberstan." A point I just made with time constraints and people not having enough time many times to just go in and complete a full operation. This situation makes the campaign significantly harder and has visibly slowed down progress. Current information from the website, helldiverscompanion.com, indicates that the Helldivers are unable to capture Cyberstan. Of course, this article was written a little earlier today, and we saw the results a little later when, indeed, we failed Phase 3. But who knows? Maybe that's why Game Master Joel and Arrowhead just immediately flung us back into the war with Phase 4, despite us not completing Phase 3? Question mark. What I will say is, after hours and hours of diving on Cyberstan, the difficulty, or should I say the death counts, are not entirely down to Helldivers doing silly Helldiver things. For the most part, the player base is enjoying Cyberstan. The combat is non-stop, the odds are overwhelming, and the bespoke missions and objectives are actually kind of challenging. However, and going back to that point about all of our diver deaths not falling on our shoulders, it's time to kind of lay it all out on the table, and I put together a set of pain points having to do with everything Cyberstan, or at least everything Cyberstan that needs fixing. Pain point number 1, you knew this was going to be number 1, Vox engines. Cool concept, and I'm not advocating for them to be nerfed in the slightest, but these guys are able to completely ignore the laws of physics when it comes to pretty much everything. From being dropped on top of tall structures at weird angles and not falling off, to being able to shoot rocket volleys through the tops of buildings or just directly through cover, everything to do with their tracking and how they interact with cover needs some serious QA. I've been run over multiple times by Vox clipping through and straight over stronghold walls, and their telegraphing of their rocket barrages disappears far before the rockets hit the ground, and where they actually hit versus where a diver is damaged and ragdolled is badly desynced. And how about the other enemy units that can pass directly through their tracks and not get damaged while we are attempting to blow open their hatch covers with a risky move to flank them from behind? In terms of how they fit in during actual combat sequences, it's really kind of sloppy. Their main cannons fire through solid structures and many times seem to have auto-aim. Add that together with extended cannon volleys, high armor pen, and then toss in 5 to 7 of these things at any given time, especially at extraction. I mean, it's a miracle any Helldivers have been able to make it onto the shuttle at all. Their rotation speeds are crazy, and if they detect you're moving up from behind them, they can just sprint off while firing backwards at you. Now, hold up, you might be thinking that I'm calling for a mass murder on the capabilities of the Vox engines, and it's probably going to surprise you that I'm actually okay with their output the way it is. These things are big, they're bad, and they're lethal, giving Helldivers something formidable to go up against. But the amount of these things, along with their physics-bending behavior, is what makes them annoying to tackle. Add in the fact they can ghost over one another so you can't see the second or third one in line because the one you just destroyed is in the way. This overall makes for a bad combination, many times replacing the thrill of a skillful kill with outright rage. TLDR here is that we need Arrowhead to tighten up their behaviors and their tracking. No more clipping through solid objects, no more shooting through solid objects, and no more tracking us with lethal precision through, you guessed it, solid objects. There's also too many of them being dropped in that when comboed with those that are patrolling, it just becomes a bit overwhelming. But you know, who knows? If the telegraphed attacks and impact zones were spot on and all the rest of their behaviors were fixed, we might be okay with 7 or 8 of these things all hunting us down at once. Pain point number 2, the Helldiver vehicles. And by the way, while I'm still in this sentence, let me add on to the end of it, suck. Back in patch 6.0.0, the devs pushed through a controversial durable damage change for enemies versus the FRV, the exosuits, and the Bastion tank, where pretty much any bot or Borg, or you can throw in their illuminate mortar rounds that fires rockets, does more durable damage to our vehicles. And at the time, we didn't know how much extra durable damage those rockets would do because they weren't in the patch notes, but now we do. Just using the automaton rocket raiders as an example, because they're everywhere, their durable damage was buffed from 30 to 100. So that's over 3 times as much as it was before. I mean, same goes for the rocket devastators, etc., etc. Back when those changes showed up in the patch notes, I kind of held my breath and I held back until we had adequate time to kind of test it out. Well, we've tested it out and it's way too much. Mechs, which the community were already screaming at Arrowhead to get durability buffs for, became 10 times weaker. By the way, I made that number up, but you know what I'm saying. Sure, you can bring one down to Cyberstan, but the vast majority of the time, you'll get in maybe one good combat encounter, and then you'll just lose the mech as it explodes to some random damage you never knew was coming. And that's if you can even get it down to the ground and get it in. The bots and the Borg now target any vehicle drop with savage aggression, many times leading to you losing your mech or our tank before it ever touches terra firma.
Vox to our left. I repeat, Vox a million to our left. Oh, they're gonna forget. Dude, they're mowing it. They're mowing it. Look at that. What are we talking about? They're absolutely decimating our tank.
Dude, we didn't even get this thing yet.
A tenth with HP.
Oh my. Dude, I just saw the tank drop on a cyborg.
Look at it. These scratches will not buff out. I promise you.
Dude, behind.
And while we're talking about it, let's talk about the tank. It's slow, it rotates like it's stuck in glue, and it gets high-sided on small rocks and debris. All of that would be things I could personally work around if it wasn't covered in papier-mâché armor. I've squatted up, and you've probably seen the videos with Background Gaming and Odo now several times, and we've gone on extended tank runs, but if the tanks weren't suffering from all that extra incoming durable damage, I think overall the player base would be using them a lot more down on Cyberstan, because that's what they were touted for, right? They were going to be our special armament device going down to Cyberstan. There's no denying that the main cannon is nasty, and the coax machine gun is great for cutting down chaff, but with its insanely bad mobility and virtually no armor plating, that tank fantasy of just overall power is not there, at least not yet. We tested it out, and those durable damage changes just aren't the right move. So Arrowhead, it's time to revert them back to the way they were before. And finally, pain point number 3, the random and completely unavoidable deaths, which happen far too often. We're being set on fire when there's no fire on the ground. We're getting killed from debris that has already flown through the air, landed on the ground, and is no longer moving. I've already touched on the Vox engines auto-aiming through cover and how their rocket barrages are just badly desynced. I've also been smushed by dropships swooping in, slamming down onto the ground, killing me, then floating back up into the air to drop off the bots, falling debris with no impact zones or telegraphing, and the list goes on and on and on. Again, Cyberstan is cool and the Borg bots are peak to go up against, but there's way too many instances of sloppy coding that need to be tightened up. If I die while charging straight at a Vox engine, that was a dumb decision from me. That's on me. If I randomly explode or just get set on fire when there's no incoming damage or fire visuals for me to see, that's on the game. Don't get me wrong, the Machinery of Oppression update is light years better than what we saw back when Into the Untested dropped, but when you're taking on this level of intensity versus enemies that are based around ranged damage, the sync and the coding between incoming damage and what the player is presented with has to be tight, and it's just not there. It's really not even close to being there yet. Now, I may have missed some of the important details, and for that, I humbly ask that you, my viewers, chime in down in the comment section by leaving feedback for Arrowhead. They've confirmed that they do see and read your comments, so if there are details I've missed, let's see them. I also want to say it again, I'm not calling for nerfs because I want the game to be easier, quite the contrary. But what I do want is a tighter gaming experience, allowing us to have more skillful decisions versus getting caught in death loops due to wonky incoming damage and, the rest of it. Also, like you see on today's thumbnail, can we please request and get a full gold armor set? We got the chrome set and cape for the 1-year anniversary, and we've now seen the 2-year Annie cape, but Arrowhead, let's make this gold set to match the cape a reality. You can do it. We know you can. Now, just surprise us. In case you want to help support the channel, please hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell to receive my latest upload alerts. If you're on mobile, please take advantage of the swipe right to hype function. A massive and heartfelt thanks goes out to all of my hardcore channel members, for without your support, none of this is possible. Until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.